When you're ready, what's that cup in the outside?
Yeah, take that.
That's extra. This is, yeah.
Phone.
All right, just put it on the floor there.
Okay. Shep,
This
put that on the floor.
episode there. Tacklin. Got it.
Yeah, so you read that at the end. But, yep.
All right, hit it, guys.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Carlos Campbell.
And I'm Kerry Rhodes, and we're Tacklin Life, where we like to invite you guys to come in and listen to true stories about honesty, vulnerability, testimony, and most importantly, human interaction. And so we got a special guest today.
We got a special
Who do we have today, Carlos?
one. We got a treat for y'all today. She's a psychotherapist and a child racist. What is wrong with me?
All right, let's bring it back one more time.
Then bring it back.
Child development specialist, yeah.
Just keep it simple.
Yep.
From
Run it back from.
the top, yeah.
Hi, I'm Carlos Campbell.
And I'm Kerry Rhodes, and we like to welcome you guys to another episode of Tacklin Life TV, where we aim to create memorable moments through honesty, vulnerability, testimony, and most importantly, human interaction. And today's guest is a very special guest, and we're gonna let Carlos go and introduce her.
We have a treat for y'all today. She's a psychotherapist, a child development specialist. The list goes on and on. I think she's done everything except land on the moon.
She probably did that too.
Probably.
We'll find out.
Right
Yeah.
now. Welcome, Dr. Ann Kirsch. Thank you.
My pleasure.
What haven't you done?
Well, I haven't gone to the moon,
You sure?
but I have always wanted to be a person who did that, be an astronaut. But when I was coming up, women didn't do that. So,
Well, in this day and
Yeah.
age, with women's movement, empowerment,
yeah, I know, but I think it's a little past my time. But yes, yeah, no, everything. I've always been someone who wanted to do everything. I have a million interests, and I've been fortunate enough to be able to explore a lot of those interests. But there are still things to do. There's still things left to do.
There's always things to do. I think one of the biggest things that I saw when I did a little background on you, I obviously researched to see what all you have done.
Okay.
And it was one of the things that stood out to me was when you were on the board of directors for the Los Angeles Child Museum.
Right.
And you wrote this column titled,
Yes.
Ask Dr. Ann, what would your child want you to know? Like, that's
Bingo.
amazing. Like, what was the inspiration for that, number one? But also, I mean, I think as adults now, we realize how much trauma and how much stuff that we bring back from childhood, right? So,
Yeah.
what was your beliefs on that?
Well, that is probably one of the most important questions that I have always asked myself, and what I seek to do in my work. I grew up in a family that was, a typical 50s kind of a family, where 50s, 60s, and children weren't really seen for who they were, and I liked being seen for who I was, and I think all children want to be. I had very good parenting and very uneven parenting, and I think that what I learned as a very young kid was that children have things to say, and that children are very, very honest about what they say. If they trust you, they will tell you the truth. From my childhood, there weren't a lot of people to trust. I mean, you didn't tell your parents everything you did, you had the run of the neighborhood, they didn't know where you went.
Yeah.
But when I had the opportunity, when I was on the board of the Children's Museum, we were talking about a column, and I proposed this idea of what you want your child to know, because what your child wants to know, what they have to say, is of primary importance to you as a parent. If you're not paying attention to the kind of child you have, then you're operating at half speed, at least. Many parents work with their children or see their children as extensions of themselves. They see them from a point of view of what they didn't get when they were kids. And they're not really paying attention and asking the questions and encouraging their even very young children to explore, to really be seen. And a child who's really being seen and being heard is a child who will open up and will developmentally, at appropriate stages, learn to trust the adults that they're with.
Yes.
And that's everything. Because what we see with adults is a tremendous lack of trust in relationships of all different kinds.
100%.
So what any tips that you would give parents and to do that to be a better listener for their kids? I say that because as I grew up, single mom, 5
Right.
kids, I'm your mom, I'm always right.
Yes.
I wasn't allowed to express myself.
Right.
And I understand it now as I've gotten older, but I also think that when I have kids, I wouldn't do that. I would allow my kid to express themselves in the manner they see fit, as long as it's respectful, because there is a way
Sure.
that you go about that expression.
Sure.
So what tips would you give parents to be a better listener to their kids?
And even before, like, if you give them that passageway to feel that they can trust you, they will share more with you, and they won't go sneaking behind your back and doing that whole deal. So, I mean, as kids, I mean, obviously, like my parents were the same way. They were, I mean, it's our way or the highway, and that's just what they learned from their parents. It's like they're just picking up things to try to troubleshoot our childhoods as well. So it just goes back and back and back.
It's
Sorry to
putting
cut you
out
off, but
fires.
yes.
It is always, it has been about putting out fires, and to some extent it still is. What I say to parents all the time, and is the idea that behavior has meaning. That you don't always know what it means when your child is pre-verbal, but you know what the cries mean, you know what the sounds mean, you know what their facial expressions mean. If you pay attention to that, instead of assuming that you know, you start right then. So what I like to do when I get the opportunity to is work with parents who, before they have children, and through a pregnancy, to get to those issues that they have when they have taken them through to adulthood. When it works that way, it is the most amazing thing, because then you see parents letting go of some of it. It's not about forgetting what happened in your childhood. It's about knowing where to place it. It belongs in the past. Who do you want to be? If you want to have a child who turns into a teenager who will tell you what's going on, you don't start when they're a teenager. You start when they are very, very young. And you listen. And you listen, you mentioned respect. So what do you say to a parent? I say, what do you think what is your child saying on the surface? A parent told me maybe a year ago, parents said, I'm worried my child is going to be, it's stealing. We went into a store and he pocketed or she pocketed some insignificant thing.
Yeah.
And then the parent noticed it and freaked out. And my reaction was, a 3-year-old doesn't steal. A 3-year-old works on impulse.
Yeah.
So they see it, they want it, they take it, sometimes they show it to you. Mostly it's just impulse. So how you handle it is important. So if you come down hard and you're punitive and you're punishing and there's no logical consequences, what you have is a child who's scared and doesn't know what to do about those feelings, and will probably start down a road, if you continue that way, to not tell you what's going on. If you say, hey, I noticed you have, a pocket full of bolts. Where'd you get that? Oh, they were in a bin at the hardware store when we went. So you wanted to have some bolts. Well, here's another way we can do that. And you say to your child, I understand that you wanted that. I get that. And then you teach them.
Do you find that there is, I don't want to call it lazy parenting, but I think there's a lack of perceived time to take out the essential moments to have those interactions with your kid instead of just, I mean, it sounds simple to have those conversations, but
yeah, it's not simple.
It's time, right?
It's not simple,
right.
Because you learn how parents, I worked for many years at Cedars-Sinai. And one of the things that we learned there and that we taught parents there in groups was the idea of narrating to your children. And narrating is just telling the story of what's going on. It's not a big psychological performance. It's, okay, you felt this way, you felt this way. Parents are working, they're busy, they're taking care of a house, they're more than one job. But at the bottom of it all, why did you have a child? Did you have a child because you thought it was the right thing to do? Did you have a child because you wanted to instill certain values? If you had a child for reasons that sound right, that feel right, then you have to take the time, because you're raising the next generation. And it can be a single parent, it can be gay parents, it doesn't matter the kind of parent. It matters that your child feels seen and heard.
Yeah, I think sometimes, and as I've gotten older, our parents had their own trauma. A lot of times they project some of their insecurities on us, and those seeds that are planted manifest themselves later.
Very
So
right.
even as an adult, we might not know where they came from. When we look back, we know, my mom did this and did that. It wasn't her intention.
That's
but
right.
She was just doing the best she can. But I kind of want to change it a little bit, because in this day and age, with the women empowerment, women movement, and women trying to balance work-life,
Right.
right? Like, is there any advice to working? How did you balance that? Starting off as being a
It wasn't easy.
psychologist. Yeah, it's so what would you say to some women, because they're trying to find that balance?
Yeah.
'Cause the part of me, and hopefully I'm not attacked for this. I think early stages of child's life, the mother, it's very important. That bond between the mother and child is really, really, really important.
Right.
And we live in a country where you have 1-2 months,
Maybe.
maybe.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
how, that doesn't make any sense at all. So how did you balance that?
Look, we're the only industrialized country that doesn't have parental leave of a substantial amount for fathers and for mothers.
Yes.
And it is absolutely absurd that we don't have that. But how do you balance that? If you have the luxury of staying home for a month, 6 weeks, you can bond so intensely with your child in that period of time. If you don't have that luxury, you can still bond. There are grandparents, there are friends, what I did was, when I went back to school, when my children were very young, when I went back to graduate school, I had a girlfriend who, and this is it takes a village.
Yes.
So I had a girlfriend who also wanted to go back to school. And so we sat down and we mapped out our schedules so that our kids all grew up as siblings. And so I took care of her kids, she took care of my kids. When our husbands came home, they took the kids, or sometimes the kids didn't want to leave one another. That's how I got through it. I don't know that I could have done it the way I did if I hadn't had this one particular girlfriend I've known now for 40 years. You have to find that person. It can be a co-op teacher. It can be anybody, a babysitter you trust. It can be an aunt, it can be an uncle, it can be anyone that you trust that loves your child, that will provide that. But yes, Carlos, you're right. A parent's bond, whoever the primary parent is, it can be a grandmother, whoever that primary parent is, has that deepest bond, and that sets the stage for everything that will come.
I want to talk about something really quick. We talk about the parents, and you say anybody that you trust can come in and kind of nurture that kid to where he needs to go. But there's a big thing now that everybody's really talking about, and it's about daddy issues.
Yes.
How
Yes.
How do you see that? Like how big of a problem is that right now? And especially for speaking about young women right now, but young women and their relationships with their fathers. How big of a problem is that, and how much does it affect relationships?
Well, when you say
before?
problem about daddy issues, can you be more specific? What do you mean by problem?
Well, I mean, just the way that a lot of a lot of adults now, a lot of adult women talk about their relationships with their father.
Okay. Oh, daddy.
Yes.
Got
daddy
it.
issues, yes.
Not father. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Got it. You know, what I see a lot in my practice, and other therapists see it too, is that there are always going to be issues. It has always been so, and it will continue to be so. Yeah. We have mother issues, we have father issues, daddy issues, but as we get older and into our adult years, like into college, out of college, it's our responsibility to realize that our parents were people. Yeah. They had their own set of experiences, And in my generation, and it sounds like you have the same experience, they didn't talk about those experiences. It was like pulling teeth to get any information.
I'm just getting information now.
And exactly, exactly.
All of it, yes.
But there are a lot of people who still live as if the past was right here in front of them. That's their present reference, their frame of reference. And you can't live your life like that. You have to be able to say, I forgive. I may not understand what you went through, but I do believe you did the best you could. Now, there are caveats. If you were beaten, if you were hurt in some kinds of ways, that isn't the best you can do.
Yeah.
But for most people, the parents do the best they can do given what they have to work with. And so as an adult, you have to find a way in your heart to find that moment of grace where you believe that that was the best, and that however it hampered you, I'm moving on. I'm moving forward. My best self.
It's something we talked about, the story behind the story, and really truly getting down to really understanding who this person really is outside of the facade or the surface level.
Right.
I want to get into and that leads into one of your inspirations, who you sent me an article about
Yes.
a guy, a Canadian
Yes.
theologian and
Vanier.
philanthropist. Speak to us about how he inspired you and how he, I'm sure, played a big part into your work.
Well, he had just passed away May 7th, and he was an amazing Canadian philosopher, theologian, humanitarian, and his whole idea was that you have to, that the worst person, a killer, a rapist, a whatever, is equal to anyone else in the world. That they were a child, that there's a child inside of them, that there's wounds inside of that person. And if you just look at a person from a God perspective, you see one thing. But if you look at a person as the same as you, there but for the grace of God, then you can start to relate. You can see what happened in their life, what's their backstory, not just what they've done or what they tell you that they want you to know because that's how they've gotten through life. But you know, the homeless person on the street has a family, came from a family. If you can see a person and hear them and listen, and they can feel like you are there, just focused on who they are, that's when communication happens. That's this idea of radical compassion, of being absolutely present with every single person you meet. That's not easy to do. He was a remarkable man, and he did a great many just stunning things. But that part of who he was is something that has always resonated with me. And what it meant to me when I started realizing who he was many years ago was that as a child, it was impossible to get yourself heard. So what did I want? I always knew I wanted children. What kind of a mother did I want? What to be? What did I want my children to realize? And I started to really think a lot about that at a very young age. I knew what I didn't want to do because I saw that. I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wasn't going to make the same mistakes.
No, that's right. Well, really deep. I wish we could have a little bit more time with you. Maybe we'll do a part 2. And get some more stuff and some more valuable information. I mean, this has been great. You got to get out of here, though, man. But I know you got something for Dr. Ann, right?
Dr.
Okay.
Ann.
All right.
We have a game that we like to play called This or That.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you 2 options, and you're going to pick one of the 2.
Uh-oh, okay.
Rapid fire.
Oh, okay, all right, I'm game.
That old adage of there's no such thing as a wrong answer is out the door. So we're going to put 30 seconds on the clock. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. The Beatles or Rolling Stones?
Stones.
Elvis or Jimi Hendrix?
Oh, Hendrix. Elvis was before me.
Nice.
Yeah.
Flat Earth or round?
Oh, round.
Pacino or Jack Nicklaus?
Nicholson.
Oh, Pacino.
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 Okay. Godfather 1 or Godfather 2?
1.
Ah. Jane Fonda or Elizabeth Taylor?
Ooh. Ooh.
I have to say Jane Fonda.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last one.
Okay.
Last one for you.
Drum roll.
But,
Sigmund Freud or Carl Jung?
oh, okay. Oh man.
Time ticking. Time ticking on you.
The expert.
Come on. Come on. Come on.
I think Freud. Freud.
I go with Freud too.
All right.
I go with Freud. Yeah, yeah.
I approve that.
I go with it. Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm approved.
Dr. Grant, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate your time.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
You can binge watch all the episodes at Tacklin Life TV and on the EverTalk app on Apple TV and Roku. Thanks everybody for tuning in.
Peace out.
Peace.
All right. I was watching from the other side there.
Yay. That was